I think I realize the major quantum leap that Avid represents. It revolutionized the process of editing and post. And Avid evolves according to our needs as filmmakers. We set the requirements and Avid responds.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name's Imran. I'm from Avid Technology. And for this, hopefully around an hour session, we're going to be taking you through Avid Media Composer and why it's the go-to choice for a lot of the industry for television, documentary, short film, and film production. So when we talk about Avid being the go-to choice, it's used on tons of productions. So certainly here in Norway, a lot of your kind of major shows, reality shows, the popular magazine type shows are all produced by post-production facilities on Avid, but worldwide, we are the leader when it comes to big shows for streaming, when it comes to all of the kind of popular shows that you watch on the weekend, The Voice, Big Brother, that kind of stuff, and also major motion pictures as well. And you may not know this, but Avid, in technology terms, is a pretty old company. We started about 30 years ago, around 1988. We won our first technical Oscar in 1989. In many ways, we were the company that invented what you know as video editing today with the Media Composer. And throughout that period, we've won lots of Emmys, Ace Awards, Oscars as well. And there's many users. We have lots of stories on our website relating to Oscars and Emmys and stuff. And there's always professional editors, audio dubbing mixers, post-production producers that have these relevant stories about what Avid means in terms of helping them produce the content that they want their viewers to enjoy. Now, when we talk about Avid post-production, today we're going to be concentrating on Media Composer. Media Composer is an NLE, or a non-linear editor. So essentially, you're filming footage, bringing it into the system, and then you're working with people to kind of build your story with the video and audio and all the tools that comes with it. But Avid makes many products, and they have a whole kind of platform as well. And when it comes to post-production, you may also have heard of something called Pro Tools. So whenever you're working and you need to work with audio, that could be music production, it could be Atmos mixing, it could be anything along those lines, then we are also dominant in that sector with Pro Tools. Now, when you're working with tons of media files for Atmos, or you're working with 4K, 8K, scanned film footage, that kind of stuff, and you have many, many people working at the same time, you need to have kind of a backbone. And for us, that would be something like the Avid Nexus shared storage system. So what that means is all of my Media Composer editors, maybe we've got 30, 40 working on a production, all of my dubbing mixers on Pro Tools, all could be working off the same storage. We don't have to duplicate media. I don't need to record the footage 10 times and put it in 10 rooms. You ingest it once, it stays on the storage, and all those users can access it at the maximum bandwidth. So if you need 30 users, they all need to have 50, 100, 150 megabits per second. We can kind of guarantee that. Avid's one of the few companies that we can guarantee that we could have 300 people editing at the same time at maximum bandwidth. We can build kind of storage systems for that as well. So we're not just talking about individual products. Avid builds platforms and allows you to kind of work on these kind of productions at scale. And you'll see there's some key kind of elements that we've got here as well. AI is mentioned everywhere. Everyone's doing stuff with AI, and certainly we are doing that as well. Now, Avid, we're not going to be doing a lot of generative AI. If you want to speak to something and say, make me a cat, it's not really our game. There's plenty of providers that do that. The sort of stuff that we're doing, we call it responsible, meaningful AI. It's what kind of how can machine learning and AI help the user? Maybe I've got hundreds of hours of footage, is there something that will help me to kind of go through that footage? So we'll take you through some of that kind of stuff as well. And then when we talk about integration, right? So we make one of the industry class NLEs in Media Composer. We make the DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, and the market in Pro Tools. You know, we need to ensure that our products work well together as well. So that interoperability, we'll be talking about that, right? So, you know, tightly integrating those kind of workflows. And then as we said, secure and scalable. Security because, hey, if you're working on the latest Marvel film, you don't want people to kind of see that before it's out. So you need to make sure it's fully secure. But also if you're working on something like a Marvel production, you've probably got hundreds of people. You've got many, many editors. You've got the directors. You've got the audio. You've got the effects people. You need to be able to scale to that and have them all kind of working together. So that's when we talk about that kind of scalability and Avid, that's what we're kind of talking about. Okay, so I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint, right? So, you know, I deliberately didn't want to just put up 50 slides and kind of go through the slides, but what we'll do is we'll go through some of those elements in a live demo, and the first thing we're going to kick off with is some of our AI enhancements when it comes to STT, or speech to text, right? So I'll stop the PowerPoint for now, and I'm going to switch over. Let me just check that's there. Perfect, okay. So what we've got here is Avid Media Composer. So if I just quickly take you through the interface, we have here something called the transcript window. Typically in a nonlinear editor, you will have usually a couple of views. The view on the left side typically is your source, it's your clips, it's your rushes. We call it the source. And then the view on the right side is linked to what we call your output or your timeline, right? So in Avid Universe, source is your source files, and record or output is your timeline. And a quick tip, Avid Universe, Pro Tools, all of them, source typically has a green designation, and timeline has a blue designation. So what we've got here is it's a clip, right? And the clip has got lots of different languages, right? And if I kind of start playing the clip now. Okay. Yeah, you got some Arabic there. You got some Mandarin.
挪威、瑞典和新西兰也有类似的情况。
And what you notice is as it's playing, can you see the green is showing me that what is the spoken word at the moment. So what we've got here is a transcript tool, and we've got our clip. And what's happened here is we've just put that clip into the system, and then the AI has scanned it, right? So we have something called phrase find. It scanned that footage, and it's multilingual. So what we're showing you here is that clip has got many different languages, and it's able to differentiate and display that. And what you'll also notice is if you look at the line with Arabic, can you see the Arabic is going in the opposite direction? Because that's the formatting for the Arabic language. So the model is multilingual, and that means if I put a clip in, it will automatically transcribe it, or you can control that, you can manually transcribe it, but it can automatically format that correctly and then kind of show me that information. Right. So how do we control the transcription? Maybe I've got hundreds of clips, they come into the system, I obviously want them transcribed. Is there a way of me managing that? So the way Avid works is it works with bins. So in the bottom left, we have typically your project structure, and each one of these kind of little filing cabinets, shall we say. So if it's been pulled out, it's open. If it's kind of pushed back, it's in. Those are called bins, and inside of the bins, you have clips. And what you'll notice is for each of the bins, I'm just going to kind of move this to the left. You will see I have this designation. I can have transcription off, I can have transcription on, and so forth, right? So if you don't do anything, whenever media comes into the system will automatically scan it and create these transcripts for us. But perhaps you don't want the music bin to be transcribed or the sound effects bin to be transcribed. You could select that area with all the music files and say, do not transcribe this. The system will then ignore that, right? So you have a really kind of useful way of kind of handling that as well. And then once the transcription is done, that transcript tool really helps you with the editing process. So I'm just going to make this area bigger. I've got something here called interviews. Just going to load up the interviews, and I'm going to load up Cat. Okay, so all I've done there is I've selected a different bin, and I've selected an interview of this lady, Cat Wild. She's one of the editors who use Media Composer. I've loaded that up on the screen, and then what it's done is it's giving me that generated transcript on the left side of the screen. So I can quickly give that a play.
As an editor, I learned how to use it because I had worked with several different editors who used it.
Yep, so 99 languages supported, and the model is always improving. So it's very, very accurate for English. We've done tests with Danish companies, Norwegian companies, Swedish companies, and they're saying it is good. There's always improvements to be made and stuff, and the model keeps improving, but you can see, as I've kind of played that, very, very accurate kind of transcription. As well as giving me the transcription, you can see I have all my time code metadata, right? So I've got the time code there as well. And you'll notice I've got speaker. So if I had multiple kind of interviewees, I could identify speaker 1 as Kat, I could identify speaker 2 as John, and then the system would recognize Kat's voice and automatically update all the speaker IDs with Kat and John and that kind of stuff as well. So we do kind of speaker ID as well, right? And then, as you notice, as I'm playing it, that green text is ganged or synced with my footage. As I kind of scrub through the footage, you can see it moves with me. What's really cool is if I highlight a section, okay, what it's done is it's automatically highlighted the in and out points. In that green area, it's highlighted that bit of text for me automatically, right? So in the past, typically I'd have to play the footage and have to mark it in for the point that I want, play the footage, mark it out. Now I can just select the text and it will kind of do that for me, right? And why is that important? Because it allows me to essentially edit with that. So what I'm going to do now is kind of create a new sequence. It's empty, and I've just highlighted the text. And then what I'll do is I'll drop that in, and then I'll highlight a different kind of section, and I'll drop that in, and then I'll highlight a third section, and I'll kind of drop that in. And now I've made cut 1, cut 2, cut 3, just using text. I don't have to load the clip up. I don't have to JKL through the footage and kind of find the point. It's like using Word. I'm just highlighting the section and dropping it in, and that's kind of super useful for me. Now, that transcript data is super important, so I could use it to kind of filter through stuff, right? So if I kind of click in here, and I look for the word edit, as I type in edit, it's automatically highlighting every time she's mentioned edit or editing or editor. And then I can quickly just kind of jump to those sections as well. So I have this kind of filter, and I have the ability to kind of quickly jump through to the section that I want. This is all useful data, so I can also kind of export this, right? So maybe someone says, hey, that really important interview, could I get a text version of that? Yeah, let me export that with the time codes for you now, right? So you can see I have something to export. There was also something called export subcap. We'll talk a little bit about closed captioning and kind of subcap as well. But you see some of the settings that I have here. I've got the export. Do I want to show the time code? Do I want to show the speaker? Do I want to show the transcription or hide that? Do I want to set the font? Perhaps I wear glasses and need the font to be a bit bigger. I've got that kind of capability there as well. Now, at the moment, remember that color we told you about, green, right? So green, that little screen there with the green where my arrow is, that's telling me that I'm looking at the transcription for the source, for my clips. But remember, I dropped 3 clips into the timeline. So my timeline now has these 3 parts of the interview with Kat, which are here. Remember, blue line, blue section. I'm going to click this button. And what it's done now is it's showing me the transcript for the timeline. Right, so this is my interview, this is what I've cut, and that kind of ability to edit with text, I can still do with this. So maybe with this one, I'm just going to get rid of the filter to get rid of editing, but maybe I want to go in here and I want to get rid of a word. I'm just going to select the word editor. Right, can you see it's highlighted it in the timeline? So if I need to go in and move ums or ahs automatically, or I need to highlight something and then remove that, I can do the same thing, and you will see that it's got that section in the timeline, and I can just hit the kind of button and get rid of it. So this ability now, using artificial intelligence / machine learning, using the ability to transcribe, means we can super accelerate shows where, like Big Brother, where you've got hundreds of hours of footage, lots of people in different rooms, all of that comes into the system, all of it gets automatically transcribed. You don't, typically what would happen is you'd send that to someone who would watch it and type it all up. The machine can transcribe all of that, have it available in the system, you can search it, you can play with it, you can highlight it, you can drop it in, you can remove it. You kind of get an idea of what we mean by, AI that will actually help the operator on the system. Yeah? So kind of really, really kind of cool features there. Now, we talked a little bit about subtitles as well, right? So what would happen in the past is, you'd have to kind of manually kind of create subtitles. So I've got clip 1, clip 2, clip 3, clip 4, right? I've switched to a different timeline, and you'll see I've got a separate kind of transcription. So what would happen in the past is I'd need to take that data, and I'd need to export the data. So that's why we had this whole kind of, there was this mechanism to export what we call a subcap. It would create a subtitle file, and then what we would need to do is we'd need to apply a subtitling effect, import the data, and then the data would be timed, and it would create these subtitles for us to a 3-step process. I mean, it went from a very long process to a 3-step process. Now, with the new version, I go into my timeline, I do a right click, okay? And then you'll see I have transcript, and I have create subcap, right? So all I've done is right click, create a subcap. Remember, I've got the data. The transcription data is there for me. It's already logged, it's timed. It's super useful. So I click that kind of create subcap button. And then remember, you could have a multi-track timeline, right? So you could have tracks of speech, tracks of effects, tracks of ADR, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you can also then choose, I want to create the subtitles for a certain track. So I've got a simple track here, so I'm just going to pick A1 for now. But that's what that means, is what tracks do I want to use to create the subtitles? Okay, so I select A1, I hit OK. My subtitles are done. Okay, subtitle, 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 right? That's like instant. Something that would take incredibly long time to bring in. It could be a manual process, even with the AI stuff. But with the latest versions of Media Composer now, we've gone from something that took a while, something that had to be exported and imported, to something that once it's transcribed, just right-click and it will make it. Right? So, and the subtitling is all kind of in there as well. So one-touch subtitling is something that's available in the system as well. Some other improvements that we made with the latest version is relating to audio as well, is related to audio waveforms. So when we talk about waveforms, what we're essentially talking about is my audio in this is the kind of darker blue color. And if I kind of click this, that's what we mean by the waveforms, right? It's the audio. We can see all of that data there. And typically when you're working, let's say Kat, we've got Kat loaded up and we want to work with her. We've got the text as well, but sometimes we want to see the kind of waveforms and stuff. This was something that we couldn't do before, but in the latest version of Avid, we've got the ability to kind of show what we call the source side waveforms. So I've got my clip of Kat, she's loaded. I can obviously play through the footage and play the footage.
How to actually.
And there is a mechanism in Avid where I can kind of switch the timeline to show me the source clip, and then I could turn on the waveforms that way as well. But what we can do now is just in here, I can right-click, and I can show those waveforms. So I go to waveform, and you'll see that we've got a bunch of options, right? So obviously, show waveform would show me the waveform, but then do I want to see a waveform map? That basically means I've got a lot of waveforms and I can quickly map through them. Do I want to show tracks? Do I want to show the mix? So there's a number of kind of options there. And then what we can do is we can go here and we can kind of hit that show waveform. And this time, I don't need to see Cat, right? I want to kind of see the actual waveforms and stuff. And I've got that kind of capability to kind of see the waveform zoom in, zoom out, and play that as well, right? So show waveforms was something that a lot were asking for, and that's kind of come into the latest versions as well. Just going to switch the timeline to the clip that I had before, the footlocker. Let's load that up. So you can see I've got a lot of waveforms. This is a pretty complex timeline for the footlocker. It was an ad that they rather kindly kind of provided to us. Let me just put that up on screen as well. Where are we? Bear me a second. I'm trying to find where the title is because it's not my timeline. Okay, we'll leave that for some. But what we've got here is I've got many kind of audio tracks and many waveforms and stuff. And something else that we kind of brought in was sometimes when users are working with all of that audio data, they may want to see different representations of the data. What we show you is always what we call the source waveform. Whatever it was recorded, that is what you are kind of getting. What we've brought in with the later media composers is we give you control of your kind of waveforms. So you'll see that in the timeline at the moment I'm looking at something called source. Well, what I can do is look at output. What does that mean? Well, maybe my source was this level and then I reduced it to a whisper. I want to be able to see what that looks like, which means a reduction in the waveform. I can choose output. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe we recorded something, but it was recorded so low that when you put it in the timeline, you've got a tiny waveform, but you need to be able to see the waveform. So you need to maximize the waveform. That's why we have something called full height. So do I want to see the actual data that's in the timeline? I can choose the output levels, right? And can you see that for example, that's gone down because we actually reduced the explosions, stuff like that as well. Or if I need to see everything maximized, I can kind of do that as well, right? So we've given you much more, as well as having the transcription and the data there as well. We can see the source side timeline waveforms, and we can see the waveforms in the timeline there as well, beyond source, to be able to show you actual output data, as well as showing you kind of full hat data. Now, this is a pretty complex timeline. Lots going on. And typically, when you need to kind of go, so remember when I said earlier, let me quickly find the slide, but I talked about earlier that there is, there's a kind of range of products in an Avid ecosystem, typically when you're producing something. Where the Media Composer is really good at narrative, editing, cutting, kind of mixing, trimming, that kind of stuff. It can do some special effects and stuff like that as well. And it has got good audio. Typically, if you really need to fine-tune the audio, Dolby Atmos, anything along those lines, additional kind of ADR, you really want to be going to a digital audio workstation like Pro Tools, right? And it's kind of the industry standard when it comes to kind of this. So a lot of your kind of favorite shows, typically the story, the vibe is all done in Media Composer, but then technically when they take that audio, typically they're sending it to a digital audio workstation where they're kind of manipulate that, right? And typically what we do in industry is we use something called AAF, Advanced Authoring Format. So you select your timeline, you export, and you say, I want AAF version 2, and then it kind of needs to prep the data, and it needs to prep the audio, and you get those files, and you go and put them into your digital audio workstation. Pro Tools is under the Avid family. It's our own kind of product, obviously. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to tightly integrate that, right? So what we can do now is when you work in Avid, you create an AVP, or an Avid Video Project. And when you work in Pro Tools, you create a PTX. It's like a PTX session. Same as if you work in Photoshop, you create a PSD, which is a Photoshop file. If you work in PDF, it's a PDF, right? So PTX, Pro Tools session, AVP, Avid project. What you can do in Avid now is you can take a complex timeline and directly create a Pro Tools project. So this was something that couldn't be done before, and now in Avid, because it's the same family, we can do that. So what that means is, I've got this timeline here. I can kind of highlight that timeline. I can go to Output, and I have this option to export to file, right? So I want to take this complex Footlocker timeline with all of the elements, and I want to output this. Yep. I select that, and then I have a number of options. And now you'll see one of those options is a native Pro Tools session. So you can still see I've got AAF and kind of stuff there as well, right? It's the one below. That's typically what the industry kind of uses. But no one else can really make a native Pro Tools session, and that's something that we've kind of brought in. And if I select that, then you'll see here I've got a number of options. But for my video, what do I want to do? So that's all of your kind of video output here. Do I want to mix it down into a single clip? Do I want to link to it? Remember, you can be on the same storage, so you may not need to create a whole new video file. The session could link to it. Maybe you want to copy all the individual elements. Maybe you want to essentially do a consolidate, which is a form of copy. Consolidate just means copying the footage. Maybe you want to have some handles. You can kind of do that as well. What format do you want? Do you want it to be MOV? Do you want it to be material exchange format? What kind of codec, what kind of raster. So you've got a whole kind of range of video options. And then for audio, you've got tons of audio, very, very similar, right? Do I want to link? Do I want to create new? But some of the other important things you've got here is, do I want to include effects? Typically, some audio people, they don't really care about the effects that were done in here because they're going to reapply all the effects, right? Do you want to include them? Do you want to exclude them? I think include them because of the way that we do it. It can be super useful. And there's a range of other settings as well. Do I need to convert? Do I need to exclude stuff that I've sent before? So this one's very important. Let's say we did a version. They said it was picture lock means we're fine, we're happy, and it goes out. but then picture lock never means picture lock. Someone makes some changes in the video and then we have to resend. And you can say, ignore stuff that I've sent before, just do the updates, right? It really helps you because which version is the latest version of all this audio and stuff, we can help you by ignoring and they only get the kind of updates and stuff. So you've got all of these settings and you then hit save and you do an export. And what it does is it creates essentially a PTX file, right? So that just creates a, let me have a look here. Export. So what we're essentially creating is something like this. That's what we kind of output. It's the Footlocker PTX file. But you'll notice there's lots of other stuff there as well. So you can see that there's some audio files because it puts them into a folder. You can see that there's a video file and all that kind of stuff as well. But for the Pro Tools person, all they really care about is that highlight blue that I've showed you. They get this single file, they double click it, what happens, right? So essentially, what that means is when I create a Pro Tools session from my Media Composer of this complex timeline, and I double-click that, in Pro Tools, which I'm going to switch over to now, I essentially, this is Pro Tools, I get all of that in a single click. I get all of that information, all that super useful information, all the audio stuff, all comes into my system, readily prepared. I have the cuts track going across the top, individual cuts of the video, and then I also have that video file. The video file is there, which means I can look back at what the editor was doing, right? There's additional stuff, there's metadata, so this is something called markers. So someone will put little notes in the system, they can kind of have those there as well. But if I kind of go here and I kind of scrub through, this is now me working with Pro Tools on the exact same timeline, but in an audio universe. Media Composer works in pictures per second, right? So typically films are 24 pictures per second, so it means one frame of video, 24 of those makes a second, whereas Pro Tools, typically you're working at sample rate, so it could be 192,000 samples a second, right? So it's just different universe, beats, bars, that kind of stuff, right? So they're inherently different universes, right? But we can basically bring that information across. Now, we've got the cuts track, we've got the video. You'll notice there's 3 distinct areas here: rendered, non-rendered, and rendered only. So remember we talked about, do you want to send the effects? Do you not want to send the effects? It doesn't really matter because we can structure it in a useful way for the dubbing mixer. So rendered means it's giving me all of my Avid timeline and it's giving me all of my renders, right? Non-rendered, typically what the audio people want is, just give me all of the data, but I don't want any of the effects. I'm going to apply my own effects. And then the bottom one is, I just want the renders. What was the new stuff? So when we talk about render, what do we mean? I've got my video, I've got my audio. If I apply effect and I render it, I'm actually creating a new video file, which is giving me the look. If I apply effect on the audio, I'm actually creating a new audio file because it's got whatever I need for playback, right? So that's new media that's created. It's not the source media. I can separate that as well. Right? So that giving that stability in that kind of single output environment to be able to do the video cut, the video file, all of the audio separately in rendered, separately in non-rendered, and in rendered only, and have the ability to expand all of that and work with it in one click. That, you know, it sounds really super easy, but it's quite a complex task to be able to do, and we've kind of managed to do that. Then what you can do is I can kind of open all of this stuff up, and I can really kind of see all of that at a granular kind of level, right? So I've got that ability to kind of see all of that data, expand it, and I can kind of work with it as well. So one of the interesting things now is I can, when I'm working in Pro Tools, I have the ability to now export back to Media Composer. So once again, in the past, you'd probably have to do kind of an AEF, bring it back. We now give the ability to take all of this and take it back into the editing room where they're kind of doing the picture editing. And that's a new file called PTXM, or Pro Tools X Media Composer, right? So I've got the ability to kind of select this and export it and bring it into Media Composer. And that's, once again, very similar. I just kind of do the export. So what does that mean for a video editor? So let's say I've done a whole bunch of stuff in audio and I want to bring it back into Media Composer. If I'm in my kind of Media Composer and I want to bring in a PTX file, all I need to know is have that PTX file, that single file, and I can bring it back into kind of Media Composer. So in this example, I'll go to my from Pro Tools folder. I've already got some stuff in here, so I'm just going to quickly get rid of that. Just going to delete the sequence, delete the clip, hit OK. Right, let's go back here and go to our let's go to this, and let's go to here. Right, so let's say my audio person has gone, they've done a bunch of stuff, and what they'll have done is they'll have created me a PTX file. Now, this could be something very complex with all the kind of media, or it could be they've done something called stems, because you can see here A1, A2, A3, A4. They've taken everything and made it into stems for me. I don't really care about that because I've just got this PTXM file, and that's the only thing I need. So what you can essentially do now is, if I have that file, I can go into Media Composer, I can select that, I can drop it in, and then it will ask me, what's your frame rate? Because remember, they're working in sample rates and stuff. I know I'm working in 24. I hit OK to all, and what it's done is it's bring in all of that useful audio stuff, it's bring it in and put it into the bin for me. So it's given me a sequence at the top with all the audio, and it's given me the separate audio elements. Down the bottom, I've essentially got a video-only timeline. So what that typically means is I'm working in picture. So this is just video. This is just the video. I've got all of my picture. It's all finished. I need to now bring in the audio. This is the audio. If I double-click it, this is all of my audio files. If I kind of click here, you can see that I've got all of my kind of audio files and stuff. In the past, what I would have to do is I'd have to load up my video, load up my audio separately, sync up my audio, and then bring it in and then marry it up, right? Something else that we've done now is something called spot to timecode. It means that if you've got your video loaded and you've got lots of separate audio and you want to instantly sync it, as long as you've got similar time codes and stuff, it should be possible. So in this example, I've just got my video, just got my video. My audio is here. I'm going to right-click my audio, and I've got this feature now called spot to timecode, right? It's going to do all of the kind of syncing up for me. This is also super useful if you do multicam or you've got multiple cameras, you're shooting a concert of some type, and you have lots of separate elements, and you want to kind of build a timeline. Spot to timecode can help you with that. But so in this instance, I'm just going to choose spot to timecode, and you'll see it's automatically lined up the audio and put it into the sequence for me, right? Now, another example could be if I take this. This is my video. This time, I've got tons of clips. Can you see how many audio clips we have there? I've got, let's call it 100. May not be the exact number. So I've got all my video, and then I've just got tons of audio files, right? Once again, individual audio files. It's not a sequence. There's my timeline with the video. This could be audio B-wave files. It could be audio from recorders. It could be anything like that. I want to be able to kind of marry that up. Once again, I can kind of right-click. I can go to that spot to timecode. And it's built it all. It's taken all those clips, it's put them there for me, and it's kind of done it in the timeline, right? So really, really super useful kind of way of kind of going in, working with these files, especially if you do multicam, especially if you have lots of kind of separate audio files that are time synced and that kind of stuff. This capability kind of gives us a one-touch way of kind of doing all of that and kind of bringing it into a timeline as well. Let's switch back to, let's go to here. So essentially, we've kind of looked at the speech-to-text stuff with the transcriptions. We support 99 languages, but it says so we can do over 100 languages, but we support 21. The only reason we support 21 is they're the ones we've tested. We can't test all 100 languages and stuff, even though the system can do that. So we are gradually going to allow all the other kind of languages to come in. It's just something that's important. Now, another big one, no internet connectivity. So everything, when we're doing transcription, that's all running on your local machine. It's running on your Apple Silicon, it's running on your Intel, it's running on your NVIDIA graphics card, for example. It doesn't need to go out, which is important because maybe you don't want to expose your data and have someone kind of scanning your data, right? So it's very important that that is kind of an element there as well. Okay? So the reason we kind of mentioned this is because this is useful for when you want to do your transcriptions. If we go into File and we go into Settings, go into Project, and go into Transcript. Okay, so it is a multilingual, but you can force the language. So I can say, actually, this is all going to be English. I don't want you scanning other languages. I just want it to be English, right? Now, remember we talked about group group clips, multicam, that kind of stuff. You can choose how the system kind of deals with that. Now, scanning, right, is intensive. So what that means is if I've got 100 clips and I stick them in my system, it's just going to start scanning. That's intensive. It means my system is being used, the processes are being used to scan that. So we're giving you a couple of options now. You know, do you want to include all of the bins and start transcribing? If you don't want to do that, untick the setting, and then you can individually just choose, and that makes it better for you to manage your processing. Another super nice one is pause background transcription while editing. This one's super nice because if I'm working, it won't transcribe. Okay? But when I step away to have a cup of tea, I'm from the UK, so it's tea, you probably drink coffee. But if I step away, the system, after like 3 or 4 minutes, the system goes, oh, no one's using the computer, I'm going to start transcribing. It's a really, really useful feature, right? So we give you the capability to turn off transcription, select the language, only choose it for a certain bin, but you can have it so that it's always watching for when you're idle, and then it will do that. Now, let me give you some examples of how long it takes to transcribe something. So if I've got an hour interview and I'm on my M1 Apple Silicon, I can probably do it 2 times real time, 3 times real time, right? Could be looking at 30 minutes, maybe slightly quicker to do a 1-hour interview transcription on Apple Silicon. It's probably the same on Intel or AMD. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a really powerful GPU, like an NVIDIA, CUDA, you could probably do an hour interview in minutes. Okay? So why is that super interesting? Because maybe I've got one machine, maybe there's 10 editors, but I've got one machine, and it's got the powerful GPU, it does all the transcription. I've got hundreds of hours, it's got the GPU, it will do it all, okay? But the thing is, how do I get the transcription to the other 9 editors? We're all linked, we've all got the same media, we don't need to copy the media, but one machine has done that. And that's where we have the manage transcriptions, right? So we've got this ability now. Once I've done the scanning, let's say, I can pick my project and I can send the encrypted transcription data. Maybe it's not massive media file, it's just data. And I can put that somewhere, and then someone else can load up the same thing, import, bring it all in. They've got the same footage. Now they have all the transcription data. They don't have to retranscribe. They don't have to process it. Process once, distribute. Really, really kind of cool way of doing it. We're trying to get to a point where it will automatically happen. So we do stuff gradually. We have the complex subtitling, export subtitling, one-touch subtitling. So we've got now export and import transcription. In the future, we want it to be like, if someone transcribes, it kind of automatically goes. So those are kind of what we're working on in the future, but super useful. Super useful for one person to do all the transcription and then just share it with everyone. They've got the same media. Or maybe you want to go home with the laptop with the media. You can copy the media, go home, take the transcription, and you can kind of continue working. Yep. But the other thing also is we talked about managed speakers, right? So you could, if I had Kat will be listed, Tom will be listed, and what I could do is I could manage that. The other problem you're going to have with AI is if I interview Kat on Monday and she is does an hour interview, that's cool, and I identify as Kat, and the AI goes, oh, I recognize Kat's voice, I'm going to add her to everything. But then I interview a month later and she had a really bad cold, really sore throat. When I put that system in, it's not going to recognize Kat because her vocal has changed. The AI is not perfect, right? So maybe you need to update it by, there'll be a Q&A at the end. If you wait, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end, because I'm nearly at the end now. Thank you, I appreciate it. But yeah, you can identify that as Kat unwell or Kat cold or that kind of stuff as well. So you've got the kind of capability to do that as well, right? So kind of super useful ways of managing the transcription. Now, the other thing that we brought in with this version, I'm just going to close this project down. Find a close project. Okay, is you can now select this on project creation. So when I go to create a project, obviously I can select my name. I can choose whether it's UHD, 8K, any of that kind of stuff, what my color space is going to be. But what you'll notice is on the beginning of the project, I can choose to turn off transcription entirely. I do not want my project to be transcribed unless I select it, so I've got that kind of capability there. And the other thing you'll notice is I have the capability to set my language hint to multilingual right at the beginning. So this is a new thing that came in as well. So right from the project screen, before you create the project, you can choose this. Why this is useful is I create 10 projects. One project has a transcription on. That's the one that's going to do the transcription. The other 9, it's always off. We don't want to be wasting the processing power on that, and we can kind of do that as well. Okay. So I will quickly jump to play from current slide. So we've kind of gone through all of that stuff. One of the other things we just wanted to talk about, just because there's a lot of educational establishments here, is Media Composer can be free for students. So if you are an organization and you are teaching video editing and you are become part of the Avid Partner Program, we can provide free Media Composer so the students can go away and they can kind of edit and that kind of stuff as well. So it may not be something that, I think that's the dollar price. It will be a euro or Norwegian kroner will be slightly different price dependent on the region, right? But as part of our affiliate program, we provide training to the teachers so they can teach the industry standard type of stuff, and we provide free Media Composers as well. One of the things we're finding is, Adobe Premiere, very prevalent, very popular. A lot of students are learning it. They go to Screen Media, or they go somewhere and then they go, right, hey, I'm really hot on Premiere and I need to work on latest kind of Survivor. Screen Media will say, well, it's all Avid. We use Media Composer and you have to understand a Media Composer, right? So we want to get this in front of students. Now, what's also interesting is you can download a piece of software called Media Composer First. So just Google it, Media Composer First. Free Media Composer, anyone can download it, lets you see how the interface works and stuff, gets you into the kind of the groove. But if you're into kind of education and stuff, there is free Media Composer, and as I said, we will train people up. We do workshops, we can work with trainers, we can work with your faculty, we can work with the instructors, we can get them up to standard, and we provide that as a service as well. So we can kind of really kind of help you with that. We're coming up to like 1:45, so I want to give some time for Q&A as well. But you know, if you want to any more detail, come down. So go downstairs and then turn left. You have the Insight booth. I will be there talking about video workflows, and then right next to us you've got ProLid, who are doing all the kind of Pro Tool stuff as well. So if you want to go into more details, just come down, and we will be able to kind of give you more in depth on that as well. Q&A, and this gentleman has a question first.
Yeah, just regarding the face.
You got a mic as well. We're looking after you.
Thanks. Regarding the text-to-speech features in what about face recognition? Are you working on that?
Yeah,
well?
so
because you told me when I already has done identification on one person, she might have a cold the next week, and I have to do the work once more. So if I can use the face recognition, there was no.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point.
Thanks.
One of the things with Avid is, I had it up on screen, responsible AI, right? Yeah. What are we working on? We're not really working on face recognition because, you know, we don't really want to be involved in kind of privacy concerns. But we have a platform, what we call an SDK, which means if you want, you can link to those providers. So we already have providers where you're working in a Media Composer, we're providing you transcription stuff, you want to add an element of facial recognition, then you can have a provider provide that. If you want generative AI, we can link to that. If you want video to video search or text to video search, I'm looking for find me a clip of a dog and stuff like that. So any technology company, we have a set amount of resources. Right, so what we're concentrating in on is our customers is typically video workflows, audio workflows for collaborative, episodic content, film content, that kind of stuff. But we provide a platform, which means that you can go and have someone bring in kind of, maybe we'll do facial recognition in the future. It's not on our roadmap, but it's not stopping you from being able to use plugins or anything like that to be able to do it.
Would you be able to elaborate a little bit about the voice recognition and what kind of models you use?
Sure. So essentially, the model that we are using for phrase find is a ChatGPT model. It's a small model by ChatGPT that runs locally. We also use enterprise class models on Media Central Cloud UX, which is a kind of enterprise platform. So, and then there's a lot of customers come to us and say, I want to use my own model, or I want to tune the model to this is stuff that we're working on as well. So we're working with universities in Norway, in Denmark, because they've got very good models that are better for that as well. Exactly. So that's stuff that we're working on as well. So fine-tuning, being able to use your own models is something that we are investigating. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there a limit in the RF export to Pro Tools for 24-bit?
Audio?
Yes, because I work with Premiere, Adobe Premiere, and we are working also with the Pro Tools.
Okay.
And there's a limit, but I don't know if it's
Yeah,
a limit
but maybe you're doing an AEF output then from Pro Tools, I assume. Yeah. For a PTX session, it just creates a native Pro Tools session. There shouldn't be an issue with audio bit depth.
No, but AAF from Media Composer is the same.
Yeah, so that's a limitation of AAF.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So PTX would get around that. That's why having a native export
That's what I
is going to be beneficial.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Counting down in 5, 4, 3. Cool, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So kind. I'm getting flowers. This is amazing. Like I said, please come down to Inside.